Hey folks, I was at KubeCon just this year in London 2025, and I had the pleasure of sitting down with Jonathan Stacks, an engineer from ngrok. Jonathan works on our Kubernetes operator and internal infrastructure. So we talked about ngrok's evolution from a simple developer tool to a full production networking platform, and how they're embracing the Gateway API, and some great insights on building Kubernetes operators. Plus, he shared how ngrok actually uses ngrok to power their own production services. Let's dive right in.
We're at KubeCon, and I'm sitting down to discuss ngrok. Can you tell me your name, what you do, and how long you've been at ngrok, please?
Yeah, my name is Jonathan Stacks. I work on our Kubernetes operator and also our infrastructure internally, and I've been at ngrok for a little over 2 years.
Awesome. All right. Now, people may be familiar with ngrok as a tool to do local development or expose local services, but actually there's been an evolution of ngrok over the last couple of years as you pivot to being a complete networking solution from the Ingress path and more. Can you tell us a bit about that and what ngrok is doing in 2025?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Like, we started as a developer tool, helping people test webhooks or putting their local host online. Since then, we've really pivoted to also include production use cases. So handling traffic for production websites, having an API gateway that's flexible and configurable.
Okay. And you're at KubeCon, so I'm assuming there's a Kubernetes operator that you're responsible for and making ngrok a native Kubernetes platform application, correct? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I love our Kubernetes operator. I work on it with several others. And the idea is that same easiness that you get with ngrok, you don't have to worry about networking. We bring that to our Kubernetes operator. So for handling both load balancer services, Ingress, Gateway API, all of that, I feel like you don't have to worry about the networking as much. So.
Yeah, so I mean, Kubernetes networking has obviously changed quite a lot. You know, the Ingress concept has been phased out rather quickly, I feel, and we're now looking at alternatives, which is the Gateway API spec. Is this something that ngrok supports today, and is that how you see customers using ngrok within a Kubernetes capacity?
Yeah, we've got, I would say, pretty good support for the Gateway API. We're still continually working. We have a PR right now to improve our conformance with that by supporting TLS route and TCP route, which I think are still in beta right now, but we continue to work on that.
And do you find that the Gateway API is a big improvement over the old Ingress specification?
I think it depends. The Ingress is limited, but it's simple. Very easy to get started with, whereas the Gateway API, it's an improved feature set and supports larger organizations where you might have an infra team managing the gateway, individual teams managing their routes. But with that, there's a lot more complexity. So,
yeah. I mean, if we dive into the feature set a little bit about ngrok, you don't just provide the Ingress anyway, right? There's all of the middleware semantics that can be applied, like the OAuth stuff, right? That's something that's really hard for developers to achieve, and ngrok have made it a configuration flag, and I love that approach. So maybe you can talk about how, when I'm using ngrok inside of my Kubernetes cluster, we don't need to go down the Gateway API side, but how do you expect people to use and consume? Is it all declarative YAML based, and the operator sits there and handles the reconciliation like we would expect?
Yeah, so we have a traffic policy CRD. Some of our other internal CRDs that you can also use support traffic policy either by reference or inline on the spec. But this is really, I think, how we see people consuming it. You can version control it, have a GitOps pipeline deploy these things. But the traffic policy is, I think, super powerful in that we give you tons of ability to route things based on headers. You can rewrite based on path, you name it. We also have some of my favorite are the OAuth modules or OADC. It's super easy, about 4 lines of YAML you throw in there, and now I've got OAuth protecting my site, and I can filter that by allowed domains or users, so great.
Yeah, I always talk to people, it's great when software has that light bulb moment where you're like, oh, it does that. Like, that's my use case. And I think the OAuth one is the classic example for ngrok, right? Because you can secure staging workloads, testing workloads, internal tools, and it is just that tiny little bit of configuration. And I think that's fantastic. All right, let's talk about building a Kubernetes operator. So you've been working on this for a while, assume. Is it a pleasant experience? Is it enjoyable? Is it fun? Is it pain?
There's some things to get used to, but overall, I would say it's very pleasant. We got started with Kubebuilder. I think it's a great project and makes developing a controller or operator much simpler than doing it on your own. I would say the hardest thing, if you're not used to this and you just consume Kubernetes and now you're writing for it, is this idea that your goal is to take the current state and move it closer to the desired state. And so with this, you get into kind of the state management problem where you have to handle any current state and you want to figure out how to move it closer to the desired state.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't used Kubebuilder in quite a while, but it still does a lot of scaffolding around controller Go, right? That's the controller runtime.
Controller runtime, yes, yeah. So there's a lot of markers in there. So in your actual reconciler, you can add markers for what you need access to, and it'll generate the required RBAC as well. When you actually say, here's the spec that I have, you can say this is required, or here's the possible enums for something, and whenever you generate it, it will add that in the open API spec for your CRD. So
very cool. All right, let's talk about ngrok using ngrok. You said you're also responsible for some of the infrastructure in the ngrok production platform. So maybe you can tell us a little bit, what is the high-level overview of how do you build a production SaaS business?
Yeah, so we do use ngrok internally. So our API and our homepage is hosted with ngrok. We actually use quite a bit of traffic policy to achieve that, whether it comes in the terms of like rate limiting, whether it comes in the terms of blocking certain malicious activity, or even internally for our own corporate tools. We use our own provider for logging in, so we don't have a VPN or anything like that.
Okay. And what are you running Kubernetes as well?
Yes, we're running Kubernetes.
So you've got a Kubernetes cluster, it's running ngrok, all your applications there. Are you doing GitOps? Are you doing infrastructure as code? Can you share a bit more about how you build a platform at this scale, right? Because ngrok is in the critical path for a lot of companies when you need to have low latency geo routing, either with BGP or DNS. I'm not sure how you're doing it, but how do you make sure that has high level of availability and is fast for customers around the world?
Yeah, so we don't have just one Kubernetes cluster. We have about 9 of them all over the world. And so our DNS Ingress is huge, with the closest one to your customer. And then you write our network back to the tunnel, wherever your agent's running, whether you're a Kubernetes operator. So we have that. As far as managing it, we have some deployment pipelines that developers can kick off. We have some CI/CD, but probably less around Kubernetes, more around Terraform and other things that sit outside of it.
Oh, very cool. All right. I will put you on the spot. What version is your Kubernetes cluster?
1.28.
Hey, it's not too bad. Yeah. I've had some wild answers this week when I've asked that question. Okay. What about your observability pipeline? Is that something that ngrok plays a part in? Are you collecting analytics? Are you tracking? Are you doing any predictive? I don't know how you're trafficking your customers are, right? But do you know how much traffic to expect tomorrow versus today? How reactive to scale do you need to be for this kind of platform?
We don't have any kind of dynamic scaling in the terms of nodes currently. Dynamic scaling, that's something that we're looking to in the future, is using cluster autoscaler. The thing that makes it hard is with persistent network connections, it's not as simple as scaling up, a stateless web app and just adding more replicas. So,
okay, all right. What's your CNI of choice?
My CNI of choice, or the one that we use?
Okay, what do you use, and what do you wish you used?
Yeah, we're using the AWS CNI. And we actually do some interesting things with that where, because we're a networking company, we attach extra ENIs to our EC2 instances, and we have to tell the CNI that these are unmanaged and ignore them, that we're going to listen on them for our applications. So we've got some custom stuff for that.
Mm-hmm. And what CNI do you wish you were using?
Oh, I don't know.
There's only one right answer.
Calico?
No, Cilium.
Okay.
All right. So for the people that are watching this, right, maybe you can give us some advice for writing controllers and any challenges that you've had that other people could learn from.
Yeah, so I think the tips for writing controllers is having a good amount of testing really helps.
What's testing?
Yes, that's testing. Yeah. I actually really liked the env tests project that spins up Kubernetes, and you can write sort of Ginkgo style tests that say, I'm going to apply this Ingress. I expect this to happen, and you can wait and say eventually, like in 10 seconds, I expect this to be there. So I think testing is huge. That we also adopted some chainsaw tests. So
What's the chainsaw test?
I believe it came out of the Kyverno project.
Okay.
But it's a way to test at maybe a little bit higher level than writing Go code to write your test. It's YAML based. You can say, install my controller or operator, apply this, and then I expect this to have a finalizer, for instance.
Oh, nice.
So
very cool.
And it's all YAML based, so it's really easy. Whenever you get a bug report, you can write a corresponding test and then, change your controller to fix it and then validate it. So
Oh, nice. Yeah, I need to look into that. I hadn't heard that before. So, but I like the Kyverno project. I think what they're doing is really interesting.
Yeah, I'd say as your controller gets more complex, you still have to start relying on testing, because otherwise you have to run a bunch of manual regressions, which is just time consuming and you can forget to do. I would say another challenge is upgrading. So if someone's 2 versions behind on your controller or 1 version behind, you have to take that into account and the whole state reconciliation. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Is there anything you would like to discuss before we shut off the cameras? Is there anything that you think is interesting for us to talk about?
yeah, I would say, as a longtime user of Kubernetes, getting started like Ingress, Nginx, and some of the other ones, I'm really passionate about this. And one thing that I like about ngrok personally is that like our Ingress controller works anywhere, even on your laptop, in your home cluster. You don't have to do any port forwarding. Like when I originally went down this road several years ago, I was looking at having to run like Metal LB and other things locally to get a complete solution online. And just being able to install this and have traffic policy and have it locked down to only my Gmail was super easy.
So. Yeah. I mean, just because, I use ngrok in my production cluster too, and one of the things I love is the fact that you don't even need a load balancer in the cloud either. Like I'm not provisioning ALBs, NLBs, ELB, like all of those disappear because ngrok becomes, it becomes a bit of everything, which is really nice. It just simplifies things and reduces my costs because, those load balancers on AWS are $25 a pop. So.
And I think along that same line, whenever you start going multi-cloud or hybrid, or even looking at, I'm doing local development, I've got a CI environment, and then multiple either staging or production environments, it works the same across all of them. So whether you're in a GitHub Actions, you can actually, leave that up for 6 hours or so and, view your whole environment, no matter how complex it is. So,
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.